and just throws it down the toilet, then doesn't flush, takes a shit on it, throws its shitty encrusted toilet paper on top, tries to flush it. No matter how many times you flush, it just won't go down. That's what this film is. Every single Batman cinematic appearance, both live action and animated, to make this list, all it needs to have done is be released in cinemas and had to at some point had a scene with Batman in it. We got Batman 66, Batman 89, Batman Returns, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, Batman Mask of the Phantasm, Batman Begins, Dark Knight Rises, Lego Batman, Batman The Killing Joke, which did get released in cinemas, and I can verify that because I went and saw it. Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, Justice League. I do have Zack Snyder's Justice League here. I don't remember if it got a cinema release, but I'm putting it on there anyway because the other Justice League got a cinema release, and of course, The Batman. We kick things off with Batman 1966. Now, it has been a fair while since I watched this film. I did go back and watch a few of these in preparation for making this tier list, but this one I could not find anywhere, at least within the time frame of me needing to watch it before doing this tier list. I have seen it. It was a very, very long time ago. I believe it was on like SBS or something. That's a very Australian reference for all you out there. SBS is like that weird channel that just shows like weird movies, old movies, foreign movies at all crazy times of the night. And I do remember seeing this on there at some point in my life. I've definitely seen it. Rose-colored glasses have definitely come back into the frame when it comes to this Batman because it is very, very true to that era of comic books where the comic book authority was kind of like, no more killing, no more blood, no more gun, no more nothing. No more, just like everything has to be like nice and appeal to everybody because, you know, at some point in time there was, you know, the same thing that happened with metal or with TV shows, video games. There was a hysteria. There was a hysteria about comic books. And the Batman comics were not left out of that. They were a part of it. And so I think they had to sort of like rein themselves in a little bit in the comics, and that reflected in the TV show and the subsequent movie. So I think because it was very faithful to the comic books at the time, it is a very fun movie. The Adam West Batman stuff is very, very good. In hindsight, you get to look back and go, no, it was fun. Like it was very enjoyable. And obviously not a part of the movie, but there is a scene in that original TV show where he's like on two phones talking to himself as Batman and Bruce. It's funny.
Batman? Yes, Mr. Wayne. Have you heard Mr. Freeze's scurrilous demands?
Adam West is a great Batman. Burt Ward is a great Robin. And it really did set the template going forward for what would come later in the comics and the TV shows. And they even brought this particular Batman and Robin back to the comics. And I believe an animated show as well at some point with Adam West back as the voice of Batman, because it is so beloved. And I think that this is, it's technically not the first outing. It's just the earliest one that I've seen. There is like a 1948 Batman film or something like that, or somewhere in the 40s. They did it, but this is like the first big one. It is one of the first comic book movies and really like paved the way for like Superman, you know, a few years after this. So to me, the OG Batman is a solid B. Just that old nostalgic style of Batman that was very camp. And there's a few movies coming up on this list that people have said tried to emulate it, but I don't think they were trying. I think they were just shit. Batman 89. This film fucking rules. I love this film so much. It is so much to do with the vision of Tim Burton to sort of, and this, up until this point, I'm not too sure because this came out before I was around and I'm not too familiar with the comics of the time either. But this really paved the way to make Gotham its own character. Like this living, breathing, gothic, grimy, slimy, disgusting city that so many Batman things, so many pieces of Batman media have tried to emulate since. The Batman TV show obviously took a lot of cues from this film, the way that they kind of designed the city to look a certain way, and it's fantastic. And then you look at Michael Keaton as Batman, and I'm sure if the internet had been around in 1989 or 1988 when this was announced, there would have been that same uproar of like, Heath Ledger as the Joker? I don't fucking think so, buddy. Taking a primarily comedic actor and going, that's our Batman. Tim Burton saw something in him that was like, this guy could be Batman. I think he's got what it takes. So yeah, I think he's a great Batman and a great Bruce Wayne. He's got that. He does have that kind of like sort of dumbfounded, stupid, playing it up, throw people off the scent of him being Batman kind of Bruce Wayne. You want to get nuts, let's get nuts is just, it's chef's kiss. It's so good. The Batmobile in this is just iconic looking. And obviously people have a lot of fondness attached to this Batman. And obviously we're getting him in the new Flashpoint movie as well as 89 Batman with the return of the Batmobile. Also, you have Jack Nicholson's Joker. Jack Nicholson's Joker is iconic. As much as people like to put Heath Ledger on a pedestal, and rightfully so, I believe it is the superior performance, this is still a really fucking good Joker. And you couldn't get anyone better at the time to play him. I know they were thinking of Robin Williams at a certain point, but Robin Williams doesn't have that maniacal nature that Jack Nicholson can portray. Obviously in The Shining, that was a good litmus test for like, can this dude really play like this sociopathic, insane, smiling, evil, fucking cartoonish villain? Did it in The Shining, and then they were like, cool, let's do that, but actually we're going to make you a cartoon, we're going to paint your face white, red lipstick, crazy looking hair. Iconic all across the board. I think it would be hard for me to go past giving this anything but an A. It is premier Batman. It is elite Batman. It is one of the best Batman films of all time. You want to come at me? Find me in the comments. Next up, we have Batman Returns. This really does feel like it is very Burton, out of fucking control in some places. Like, legitimately, having the Penguin as Danny DeVito, first of all, an inspired fucking choice. But then actually making him like a penguin mutant boy with like flippers and shit is just like insane. Like in the comics and all the source material, like he's not actually a penguin or a weird mutant boy. He's just like a short dude with a fucking big ass nose that just kind of laughs like a bird. Like a very sick bird, apparently. Went absolutely buck wild with it, and it's awesome. Christopher Walken, anytime you got Christopher Walken in a movie, I'm going to like look highly upon it. Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. I would have seen this movie when I was young. Like this movie came out, 92, 93, I want to say. 7 or 8. Probably the first time I would have seen it would have been on like TV as a rerun. That catsuit awakened stuff in me. That awakened dormant stuff inside me. Like my manhood just sort of like a prairie dog just sort of poked its head out and was like, oh, that's a thing. And then, ducked back down to lie dormant for another few years, but it was a formative moment for me and so many others like me. The catsuit is just, and her performance is great. Again, Keaton kills it here as Batman. Love him. I don't feel he had as much to do in this because he kind of gets overshadowed by all of his supporting cast, which is fine. Great supporting cast. But yeah, it kind of did feel like Burton was very preoccupied by, really establishing these new characters that the continuation of Batman kind of felt a little bit stunted in this one. But in saying that, it is a movie that I do enjoy going back to from time to time just because it is nearly just unadulterated Burton, which I feel like is something that cost him doing the third film. So to his detriment, but at the same time, it's like every now and then, and this is before like the Burton formula kind of got stale, it was very nice just seeing Tim Burton be allowed to do whatever the hell he wanted. And you ended up with a movie like Batman Returns. So I think for me, it's not as good as the first. So I think a solid B for Batman Returns is right where it should sit. Change of Batman. We've got Val Kilmer, Batman Forever, the introduction of the Riddler and Two-Face into this Batman universe. It's definitely a drop. It's the Schumacher era. It's definitely a different looking movie. A different looking Gotham City. Gone is the gothic, grimy sort of architecture and aesthetic. We're more neon now. We're more post-punk, as it were. This is a mid-90s Batman. Gone is the grunge. In is the boy bands. Definitely reflected in the suit here as well, and obviously the look of like Jim Carrey's Riddler and Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face. This does not feel like a continuation of the Tim Burton universe. We're in a different universe now. The saturation's been cranked up just a smidge rather than the contrast being turned all the way down. I like Val Kilmer as Batman. He's got the chin. If we were going off like if this was a Batman tier list of just this, the nose and chin area, you got to give it to Kilmer. The lips, baby, the lips, the chin, everything. Say what you want about Keaton, doesn't have the strongest chin in the world. Good looking fella, but when it's just chin, when all you're seeing is this, Kilmer's got it. Kilmer wins. And that's for any Batman, by the way. Bale, Affleck, whoever. Nicole Kidman's in this movie, and so is that song from Seal for some reason. Introduces Robin as well. I think Chris O'Donnell, playing him at the tender age of 25, I believe. There is something about it that just doesn't hit the same way that the Burton movies did. I think losing Keaton sucked. So losing that, gaining Kilmer, it's not a one-to-one trade-off. You are losing something when you do that. On the other hand, you do get Jim Carrey's Jim Carrey's Riddler, which is just, I mean, this dude was on a fucking hot streak in the early 90s. Like, Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura, the second Ace Ventura, Liar Liar, Me, Myself, and Irene. This dude was hitting it out of the fucking park. And then it's like, hey, you want to come be a Batman villain? Sick. You're the Riddler. My God, I miss this era of Jim Carrey. This is just unadulterated Carrey at his peak. It's beautiful. It's a fucking just masterclass of physical comedy to watch. Tommy Lee Jones' Two-Face is interesting. Obviously, a little bit of tension on set, but for the most part, I think they played off each other really well. It's an interesting little time capsule that if anyone out there who was born, say, after 99, 2000, you want to go back and just like experience everything that mid-90s cinema had to offer. Val Kilmer, Jim Carrey being manic as hell, Tommy Lee Jones visibly hating the roles he was doing, a soundtrack by Seal, Nicole Kidman being relevant. Go and watch Batman Forever. But after saying all that, I've got to rate it. I've got to put it somewhere on the list. For now, it is a D, but that may change. We will see. Next up, Batman and Robin. This film takes everything that was good about Batman Forever, namely Val Kilmer as Batman, and just throws it down the toilet, then doesn't flush, takes a shit on it, throws its shitty encrusted toilet paper on top, tries to flush it. No matter how many times you flush, it just won't go down. That's what this film is. And this is what I said earlier, where it was like the movies felt like they were trying to go back to that camp era. At least that's the justification people make now. Those people are wrong. Those people are trying to reimagine this film as like a throwback to the camp 60s era. No. This film is exactly what it was presented as, and that was presented as, this is the latest and greatest Batman. We're not taking anything from the past. We're going to make this the way that I want to make it, that namely being Schumacher, and just shit in the bed. Just the one-liners, actually, just the Poison Ivy one-liners, the Batman one-liners, the Mr. Freeze one-liners. All of it is just, it's so hard to sit through. It's so hard to listen to. Like, you took Arnold Schwarzenegger, who arguably was the biggest action star of the time. You painted him fucking white and blue, and then gave him nothing to do except spout really bad ice puns. And then you have fucking Uma Thurman. This is coming off the back of Pulp Fiction, and you made her a goddamn weird flower lady with fucking crazy green eyebrows. Oh, it's hard. It's hard to sit through this film. Even for the camp value, like the retroactive camp value. Even if you want to say that and justify it that way, it's still hard to sit through. And then you got George Clooney, who like sells it as Bruce Wayne, because all he has to do is just be George Clooney. Suave, sophisticated, rich as all fuck. He walked in the door and said, not a problem, boys, I got this. But the minute he puts on the cowl, there is no change in his demeanor or personality, really, except he becomes more of a bastard to Robin. Batgirl, Alicia Silverstone, she's an absolute throwaway in this, by the way. Literally all I think they just like, the costume designer was like, oh, I made a Batgirl suit or a Batwoman suit just for a laugh. And they were like, we're going to cast someone to put in that. Do we have it in the script? Nah. Let's just do it anyway. Bane in this is like looks the part, has the comic book accuracy with like the veins and the fucking mask and all the fucking pipes and shit coming off him. Like visually, it looks fucking cool. It's got like the fucking Mexican wrestler mask and shit on. Not once does he break Batman's back. We need to find a flaw for this thing. And we just found the flaw. For anyone who enjoys this movie, all the more power to you. But it's so hard to sit through. It is so goddamn hard to sit through. Batman Mask of the Phantasm, I believe, was released in 93, 94. Got a cinematic release. That's why it qualified for the list. And I actually rewatched it last night. It is a continuation of the brilliant, fantastic Batman animated series, which still has the best Batman in history, Kevin Conroy. Mark Hamill back as the Joker for this as well. Always good to see him. And yeah, this sort of serves as a bit of a origin story for Batman, at least in the animated universe, and is all around a very, very solid piece of media. Do I think it's fantastic? No, but I really, I enjoyed rewatching it, and I enjoyed just going back to that cinematic the TV universe, because I think that show is fantastic. I love it. The aesthetic of it obviously borrowed a lot from the Burton Batman at the time. It was like what was hot, what was popping. It was a cool way for them to do sort of this origin story of Batman and, his love interest that, it's that initial fight that he discovers that he has to have between this mission that he's set himself to do and the people that potentially could be in harm's way of him doing it. And that decision he has to make to be like, all right, do I commit to someone while at the same time trying to be the Caped Crusader? And that line he has to dance. A little bit of time has passed and the animation isn't up to the snuff of what we would expect today, but this show was all about the aesthetics. And the aesthetics are incredible. Like, Gotham looks awesome. I love this Batsuit. Like, it really took the black, grey, navy blue with the hints of yellow and absolutely ran with it. And that became like an iconic Batman look. And this TV show and the 89 Batman movie just like cemented that. And for the longest time in the comics, that was also the look they went with. It was so visually striking and so visually iconic that like every other bit of Batman media was just like, that's the look for like the next 20 years. But yeah, it's a solid film, but I think rewatching again, I'm like, it's fine. And I think it sits at a solid C. It's time for the Nolan movies. It's incredible. It's a fantastic start to what would end up being a absolutely iconic trilogy. The only real, I would say, downside to this movie is just, I don't think it has the strongest villain in the world. That's about it. Like, I don't think that either Scarecrow or Ra's al Ghul are sort of overly compelling villains, but I think that may be just hindsight because of what came afterwards. I think if I were to go back without the knowledge of The Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises in my head, I would say, yeah, this film is A1 prime beef S tier shit because it gave us so many iconic things that would become Batman staples for that 2000s, 2010s decade. Back to the all black and grey suit, the subtle bat symbol, the Batmobile, the tank, the tumbler. That's the word I was looking for. All these things started in this movie, and I think it needs and deserves a lot of credit for what Batman became in the 2000s and 2010s in all other media. It's really hard to say anything against this film except for like, I just didn't like the villains that much. Apart from that, I think all the action's really cool. Like that first scene where he really gets to like Batman it up. I think it's a solid A. I think it just goes above Batman 89. Let's talk The Dark Knight. This film is incredible. There's no other way to put it. It is a masterclass in Batman filmmaking, in general. And this movie, I think it came out the same year as Iron Man. And I think those two movies combined as a whole, I think changed a lot of people's perceptions about what a comic book movie could be. But this movie did it more. And it blew me away the first time I saw it. I remember going to the cinema and seeing this movie. I remember like hearing about, first of all, Heath Ledger being cast as the Joker. And I was probably one of those people that was just like, oh, the pretty boy from A Knight's Tale. Are you fucking kidding me? And then obviously he passed away, which sucked. And then I don't know if the first trailer had come out before that or after it. I'm not too sure. Because I know this came out like May or mid-year-ish. But that first trailer, I was in awe of what I was seeing. I was like, holy shit. What is this? It is honestly one of those roles where the actor just disappears. Like you look at the Joker, and I watch it now and just go, like, where is Heath Ledger? There is nothing. Like he completely bought into the assignment of like, I need to be this character. And I think like the makeup definitely helps because it distorts his face and it doesn't like really look like Ledger. But It's the mannerisms, it's the voice, it's everything is just. I mean, the guy won an Oscar for it, and rightfully so. Like, one of the greatest performances, I think, in any comic book movie, and I think villain performances in any film. Truly, like, he portrays that unstoppable force that he describes himself as in the film. Like I said, in my Batman review, it's like, it is hard to do villains that Batman can't really beat just by punching them. And the Joker's the perfect example, because he'll take a punch. He's already thought 10 steps beyond getting punched in the face and getting arrested and getting taken to prison. I don't think there has been a better interpretation of the Joker. I don't think there will ever be a better interpretation of the Joker. A lot of that does distract from how good the rest of this film actually is. Like, I think this is the best Christian Bale has done as the character. And obviously getting to bounce off Heath Ledger for, 2 hours. This is S tier. This is for everything that's not just Heath Ledger and his performance, but it is, you get the best version, I think, of Lucius Fox. You get the best version of Harvey Dent. You get the best version of Commissioner Gordon. You get the best version of Alfred. You get the best version of Rachel Dawes. Like, it's just everything. Everything about this movie just hit at the right time. One of those times it is far greater than the sum of its parts. It is a perfect comic book film. The only thing that is bad about this film is that we never got to see Heath Ledger reprise the role. And now we move on to The Dark Knight Rises. This one is controversial. This one is divisive amongst not only the Nolan Batman fans, but just Batman fans in general. What's going on with Tom Hardy's Bane? How did Batman get out of that hole and then back into America without a passport? Why does it matter if we have to answer these questions? It's a movie, but these are the questions that always pop up. Coming off the back of The Dark Knight, it was an impossible task. An absolutely insurmountable, impossible task. Well, you get Tom Hardy, you put a mask on his face, you do a really awesome plane stunt to get us feeling in the film, to get the adrenaline pumping, to get the veins going. After that, kind of meanders for a bit. Yeah, the film does ask a lot. Like I said, like the whole, like, how have there been just dozens, if not hundreds of people living underground in Gotham undetected for what must have been at least a year, if not more, to coordinate this ridiculous plan? How have they been eating? Have they been drinking sewer water? Who fucking knows? It does feel like they got to the end of the film and they were like, yep, so all the cops are out of the picture. Gotham is cut off from the world. No one can help them, and there's a bomb doing laps of the city. How do we get to that point? And their solution was explosive cement. And that's a big pill to swallow. Gotta say. Pretty big pill to swallow. There are definitely positives in this movie. I fucking love Tom Hardy's Bane. I don't give a shit about the voice. Like, if you watch the movie, you understand what he's saying. You get there. It is, like, totally believable that he's, like, could definitely break Batman's back and does. Like, I'm glad we finally got that scene in a movie where he just, like, fucking lifts him up and then, bang, fucking drops the knee on his back. Fucking pro wrestling style, and just cracks him, makes him humble. But yeah, the Talia al Ghul switch is just, it's a lot to bite. And this movie does the thing that a lot of movies do, where retroactively they try to make a villain more important than they actually are or were. Like, I find it really hard to believe that ending The Dark Knight, going in The Dark Knight Rises, the plan was always to reference back to Ra's al Ghul and the League of Shadows as the overarching bad for this entire series. Like, we got rid of him in the first movie, and then the second movie was just this contained masterpiece. And then to go back to that eventually kind of felt a bit cheap. The thing that stands out for me is, like, Bane, Catwoman, Anne Hathaway, fantastic as Catwoman. I really liked her in this. It was always going to be impossible following up The Dark Knight. Really what this comes down to. So I think for me, it is definitely the weakest of the Nolan trilogy, but it's still not that weak. Like, it's still a good film. So I think it can go at the bottom of B. Actually, no, it's probably better than Batman Returns. There we go. The Lego Batman movie. Great film. So much fun. Great additional supplementary piece to the Lego movie, which was like one of the biggest surprises of all time, going into that film being like, oh, this isn't terrible. It's actually really quite good. I think a lot of people, like, Will Arnett as Batman is like one of the shining lights of this film. And giving him his own spin-off was an absolute no-brainer. And the brilliance of this film is that you have the entire Rogues Gallery to play with. They went absolute ham with it. They went so hard on the Rogues Gallery. There were some deep, deep cuts. We finally got any cinematic version of Clayface, which is just so good. It's just a fun romp through everything that is awesome about Batman, everything that is cool about being a Batman fan. So yeah, I think it's a solid romp. I think it is a solid. I don't think it was good as the Lego movie, and I don't think it's as good as a lot of the movies on this list. I still think I like Batman Returns better because it's just batshit insane. The Batman movie, the Lego Batman is batshit insane for its own reasons, but it's not the same level of batshit insane as Batman Returns. So it's going there for now. It may change. We'll see. Speaking of animated Batman films, Batman the Killing Joke. Now, for those of you who think that, hey, this only came out on DVD, wrong. This came out for one day in cinemas, and I went and saw it. The Killing Joke is one of my favorite graphic novels, one of the best bits of Batman literature. It's one of the best bits of comic book literature ever. It is a origin story with a unreliable narrator kind of story for the Joker. Is it his origin story? Is it not? Who's to say? However, the film, well, they kind of had to fill the film out with some extra shit. And that's kind of where it all falls off. Now, for the most part, when we get into the Killing Joke story, it was awesome to see literally like the comic book pages coming to life, like panels from the comic just being reproduced for the big screen was a cool thing to see. And this, the graphic novel has some amazing visuals in it, especially the finale in the abandoned carnival. Just some brilliant artwork. But it's not a very big book, and it definitely wouldn't fill a feature runtime. So they kind of tacked on this story at the start about Barbara Gordon being in love with Batman and then having sex with him on a rooftop. It was super weird. Yeah, just odd. And there was a few other things they tacked on as well, just to kind of like pad the story out. Didn't work for me, and I don't think it worked for a lot of people. Yeah, it's hard to go from how good the comic is and then have them, like, the worst part is they got so close to doing such a fucking good job when they were like taking from the source material and reproducing it on the big screen, but all the ancillary stuff they added to it just to like pad the runtime and make it feature length just drags it down. And it sucks. Like it hurts to say that because it's such a good piece of fucking comic book history and now is kind of forever tainted a little bit by a subpar film adaptation that never really needed to be made. Like we never needed a animated version of The Killing Joke. Like it stands alone as one of the best bits of Batman literature, and it's going in the D column. It hurts. It honestly hurts. I mean, it's top of D. Just for when it did right, it did right really, really well. But when it fucked up real hard. So BVS, Batman v Superman. God, I wanted to like this movie. I wanted to like it so much. I really did. Actually, did I like it? Let's have a real quick look. I wonder if my review's still up. We're going back into a little bit of history here, boys. Let's look at my review for Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. So this is my old YouTube channel where I used to review movies and TV shows and stuff. It'd be interesting to see what my thoughts were coming right out of this film because I really wanted to like it. I really wanted to like it. Let's see how much my opinion has actually changed. All right, let's watch my movie review. Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice is directed by Zack Snyder, Henry Cavill, Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Amy Adams, and Jesse Eisenberg. And it is the sequel to Man of Steel, and it's also supposed to be like the kicking off point. Filmed on a fucking potato. DC Cinematic Universe, including the Justice League. And seeing as DC is a fair bit behind Marvel on the whole like shared universe thing with a bunch of superheroes. I'm even wearing the fucking Batman hat. As many superheroes together in one movie without calling it the Justice League, but giving us an idea of what a Justice League movie would be like in the future. But as it says in the title, this movie is also about the ideological differences between Batman and Superman. And I have been looking forward to this movie ever since it was announced. It was one of the most anticipated. Using those $3 words, really, Ricky. I mean, like I've said many times, it's Batman versus Superman on the big screen in front of us, and it was okay. And that's a worry. Okay, first of all, the good. I will talk about the good first because
Here we
there's
go,
a
the
lot
good.
of good
The good.
in this movie. Ben Affleck as Batman is fantastic. He is fucking awesome. He's one of the first actors to really bring that duality of Bruce Wayne and Batman to screen, and you believe him in both roles. You totally
Ooh.
believe him as like the
Okay.
playboy Bruce Wayne. He
Interesting.
really does bring that
Interesting to
character
think
life,
that.
but you also really believe him as Batman. He is probably
Yeah.
the most brutal,
I,
badass Batman
I stand by
ever
that.
put to screen.
I stand by
Some
that.
more good was Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. She was, along with Jesse Eisenberg,
You know what?
one of the real strange casting choices I found in this movie, and ones that I was really worried about because up until this point, I'd really just seen her being pretty and driving cars in the Fast and the Furious franchise. I didn't know whether she had the acting chops to pull off a character like Wonder Woman, but thankfully, she did a fantastic job, and her introduction into the battle scene at the end of this movie was one of the best parts of the movie by far. It was fantastic.
I stand by that.
100%
I stand by that.
for Gal
100%.
Gadot as Wonder Woman.
100%.
Now, Henry Cavill as Superman.
And I was
he did
proven
a
right.
Good job again.
She was good in the first one.
Performance in Man of Steel. I liked his performance here. It's nothing to write home about.
He was solid in this.
He does
He was
a fairly
solid.
serviceable job here. And
Solid.
Because I fell asleep in Man of Steel and didn't fall asleep in this, I'm just going to say that means he got better.
Oh my God, I did too. That's fucking funny. I forgot about that.
Rips from wall to wall of Zack Snyder. Now, some will say he is very much style over substance, and that's a fair criticism to make about this movie. But on the other hand, the movie looks gorgeous. It is beautiful from top to bottom.
Okay. I stand by that. I stand by that as well.
Fantastic score provided by Hans Zimmer. It is just
Score's
amazing.
good. Score's
like a whole other element to this
so
movie.
good.
And it really helped deliver that sense of scope and just massiveness to this movie. And also the way a few of the other Justice League characters were sort of shoehorned into this movie, it wasn't too over the top, it wasn't too obvious. It was a nice subtle way to set them up for future movies. Now for some of the bad. Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. I couldn't get into it. It was just, Mark Zuckerberg all over again. It was just, but even more annoying than he was in The Social Network, if that's possible. Like, I just never bought into the fact that he was this real, supervillain guy. He was just this annoying
spitting facts.
kid.
Spitting facts.
Wayne, well, not entirely a bad thing. I just don't really buy into her either. I didn't really buy into her in Man of Steel. And she didn't really do anything in this movie.
They didn't give her anything to do. They didn't give her anything to do.
The action. This sort of falls into both categories, the good and the bad. The good action is the fight between Batman and Superman when we finally get it. Although the reasons for them actually getting to the fight
solid.
Bit convoluted and dumb. Like, you kind of understand why Batman wants to fight, but the reason that Superman wants to fight, I found it really just shallow and
why did they want to fight?
Did not suit the rest of the movie. Now, the fight was great, albeit a bit too short. And it wasn't too long before they were on the same side, fighting that common enemy. And that common enemy, as you would know from the trailer, is Doomsday. Now, this fight, while it had its cool moments, fell into the same trap as Man of Steel. It was destruction porn for the sake of destruction porn. And you would have thought,
Spitting.
after the
Spitting
backlash
facts.
of Man of Steel, Zack Snyder would have learnt. Well, he hasn't. But he tried his best to find excuses for why there was so much destruction. Now, of course, with Doomsday, you're going to get destruction on a massive scale. But every time there was a big action set piece, there was some cheap line of dialogue to sort of explain why there'd be no casualties, like, there's no one at the docks, or that part of the city's closed for the day, so there's no one around.
Spitting facts. Spitting them.
Made me feel like I was taken out of the movie again. Like,
look at me go.
Directly talking to me, saying, hey, we want to blow shit up, but don't worry, we don't want to feel guilty about a bunch of people dying, so they're in a place in Metropolis or Gotham where there are no people. Also, from a storytelling perspective, this movie is really disjointed and nothing really meshed that well. There were scenes that seemed out of place. True. There's a lot of the dream sequences, like the Nightmare Batman sequence, while cool, kind of came out of nowhere. And there's another couple of ones that we haven't seen yet in the trailers that, once again, just kind of came out of nowhere. And there was no context given to them. And then once they're over, they're not really referenced again. And you just sort of left wondering, why was I subjected to that? Why was 3 to 4 minutes of screen time wasted on that when it could have been developing a story? This problem plagued the movie a lot in the first and second act, and it felt like it took ages for the story to actually get going, which in a 2.5-hour movie is not a good thing. You want to be hooked from the start. Probably my favourite scene in this movie is Bruce Wayne in Metropolis while Superman was fighting Zod in Man of Steel. It was absolutely fantastic.
Great opening. Absolutely fantastic opening.
Right at the start of the movie, so I'm like, brilliant. Let's have some more of this all the way through the movie. And then it gets bogged down with like courtroom scenes and just
Granny's piss
that I just did not care about. I didn't feel served the movie, didn't progress the plot forward. There were a lot of scenes in this movie that I just felt could have been just plucked
and you wouldn't have known the difference. Just take it out, trim this movie down to like 2 hours.
Instead, we got a fucking
And at the end of
deluxe
the day,
cut
I
that
wanted
was
to
even
love this
fucking
movie.
longer.
I wanted it to be amazing. Unfortunately, in just a few key areas, it fell short. So with all that being said, the good performances and the good
What
action,
did I give it?
and then the bad performances
I
and
reckon
the bad
a
action,
3 out of 5.
I'm going to give Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice 3 out of 5 Batmans. So if you've seen Batman v Superman, what did you think? Let me know in the comments.
3 out of 5.
Down below. Click right here for all your movie needs.
Hey,
And as always, guys,
subscribe.
I'll catch you in the next one.
solid review by me. Well, that's everything I wanted to say about Batman. Yeah, that's everything I needed to say about this movie. It was a 3 out of 5, baby, which puts it right in the C category. I've said it as good as I could right there. I was a lot more articulate then, apparently. Right now, I'm just like, yeah, it's fine. It's all good. Suicide Squad, there it is. What is that lighting, my boy? What is going on there? I remember being a bit harsher to Suicide Squad. Let's see what I
Suicide
said.
Squad is directed by David Ayer and stars Will Smith, Margot
Oh.
Robbie, and Jared Leto, and is the next film in the DC cinematic universe. Now, there was a lot of hype.
That audio,
going
my
into
guy.
this
That
movie,
fucking
and a lot of
audio.
What DC are doing
Oofed.
going forward rested
Big oofed.
on this movie after the disappointment that was Batman v Superman. A lot of people were hoping that this movie would be the movie that brought the DC universe up to sort of level where Marvel is right now and get it really going and actually be a good, really good DC movie. But instead of resting on one established hero or a group of established heroes, this movie focuses on a bunch of villains recruited together by Viola Davis's character. And essentially the idea is you send them on a bunch of, suicidal missions where if anything goes wrong, all the buck gets passed to them. There's no
Am I wearing the same? I am wearing the same
of
shirt.
Viola Davis's character.
I
or
really
US
like that
government
shirt, apparently.
as a whole. Essentially, they're a black ops unit that's just sent into the most
Interesting.
ridiculously dangerous situations. And if they die, it's no big loss because they are villains. Which in itself is a really, really cool concept. And
They are
the way the concept is
the
played
Suicide
out in the
Squad.
movie, well, I'll get to that. First of all, we'll talk about some pros. in
Little
this movie.
sizzle? Little
There are a
sizzle
lot of
for
good
the end?
things. Mostly it is the performances
Good work. Good
of
work.
Will Smith and Margot Robbie as Deadshot and Harley Quinn respectively. They were really, really good. And the two most fleshed out characters out of
Easily the
entire
standouts.
Suicide Squad, which makes a lot of sense because they are the most established actors in this movie. And they both did a really, really good job in their characters. I really, really like Will Smith's character. And it's back to that classic Will Smith, just pure seeping charisma. And I loved it. He had some of the best lines in the movie. He was really funny throughout, and he actually had the most.
It's not
depth
saying
out of
much,
any of the
to be honest,
characters.
really.
He has a daughter, and a lot of what he does is to make sure that she is okay. And Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, this is the first cinematic version of Harley Quinn live action that we've got, and I think Margot Robbie did a very, very good job playing up the crazy,
It only gets better from there too.
unhinged
It
version
only
of
gets
Harley
better.
Quinn that we're so used to, and I think she did a really, really good job with this character, and I'm looking forward to her hopefully being in a lot of DC movies going forward, because I thought her characterization of Harley Quinn was
You get
pretty
your
on the
wish,
money.
boy. You get your
A lot of
wish.
the action scenes in the first and second act of this movie are really, really well done as well, and the setting of this broken down empty city is a really, really cool one. It makes the movie feel very claustrophobic in areas. It's very confined, and I like movies that give you really only one main setting. And
I don't
let
think
the
I
entire movie play
agree
out
with
within
that now, to be
setting. It
honest.
can
That
work
was-
really, really well.
It was
And
shit.
for the most part, it worked really, really well in this movie. However, later on in the movie, the action did not quite work as well, and we're getting
Nope.
into the cons of the movie
Nope.
here. The villain, for the most part, not that great. A very stock
We've got
standard
2/3 of the
basic
review to go.
villain that motivation was unclear. The end climax felt very similar to a lot of pretty poor comic book movies we had in the past.
Yep.
Fantastic Four. Ugh. And yeah, like the motivation was confusing. I just couldn't buy into
Owned
why this
Fantastic
villain is
Four.
doing
Kid
what
wrecked.
they're doing. It didn't really have a cohesive through line for the rest of this movie. And for some of the performances that I did not quite like the Joker, I'll say it right now, I really didn't think that
Terrible.
Jared Leto's Joker
Terrible.
even had a place in this movie. You could have completely removed the Joker from this movie and it would have been fine.
Yes, son.
Him being in
Spit
this
that
movie
truth.
so sparsely really didn't do anything for his portrayal of the character. I think there is a potential there for this to be another great portrayal of the Joker character, except he just isn't in the movie enough. He just
Ooh.
pops up here and there in a
Rough.
few flashbacks and a
Rough
few
to
present day
say.
scenes, but it just wasn't enough to get a really good idea of what Jared Leto's Joker truly is, what he is like, and I think that really hurt the
That is
movie. So I
true.
think if you just had taken the Joker out, but even like just kept mentioning him here and there, like obviously Harley is obsessed with him if she had just talked about
Yeah.
him here and there
Yeah.
rather than having him in the movie, it might
Yeah.
have been a more effective way to introduce the character.
Uh-huh.
And yeah,
Yeah.
the last action set
Solid.
piece of this movie is very, very generic, and I just couldn't really buy into it towards the end. It just made the movie end on a really, really flat note. Speaking of notes, the soundtrack to this movie was extremely distracting. Now, looking back at Guardians of the Galaxy, that soundtrack was phenomenal, but it had a through line.
James Gunn.
which was the
Interesting.
mixtape
Interesting
that
if you had have
Star-Lord had.
taken James
This
Gunn
movie
and
just
Suicide
throws in
Squad and just...
cool pop songs for what felt like the sake of it. It's just like, hey, Guardians had these cool pop songs. We put
They
these
call
cool
me
pop songs in the
Nostradamus,
trailer.
baby.
Let's put them in the movie, but it felt very, very disjointed in a lot of sections where it was like I would have much rather score instead of a pop song. And at times it really, really took me out of the movie because I'm watching the movie and there's a song that I know popping up, but I'm like, where is the context for this song in the movie? Why is it in this part of the movie? You know, there was like 15 different songs that popped up in this movie,
Spittin'.
and for a lot of it, it just felt like it wasn't necessary. Like, for the most
Goddamn
part,
right.
when there was
Goddamn
just score,
fucking
the
right.
score was quite good, and I'm like, I want to explore more of that. Use that instead of just getting these songs to cover where you would usually have a score. And then the biggest thing that I know a lot of people have talked about in relation to this movie, the editing is odd. It is
Atrocious.
just really, really choppy.
Atrocious.
And it feels like there's entire chunks of scenes just missing.
Yep.
And there's a lot of stuff from the trailers that wasn't in this movie.
Hashtag
at all.
release the
Apparently
Ayer
there's
cut,
been
baby.
multiple cuts
Release
thrown
that
around
Ayer
different
cut.
test screenings, and they've tried to sort of take all the things that people liked from all these different versions of the movie, these test screenings, put it into one movie and try to make that work. And it just hasn't. It feels like about 4 different movies crammed into one. You got like the big action comic book movie. You've got like sort of a darker story trying to weave its way in there as well. And, you know, a comedy at times because of the comedic lines they're trying to get across. And none of it works. It all just clashes with each other. None of it works really, really well. Now, don't get me wrong. This movie
Truth.
has moments of brilliance. Things that are just like action set pieces that are great. Scenes that are shot really, really well. Bits of dialogue that are fantastic between certain characters, and even Jai Courtney is actually really, really good in this movie, which I never really thought I would say.
He's
But it just
solid
feels
in
like all
the
these
in the
moments
next
of
one as well.
brilliance have been squandered by how just disjointed the movie feels, which is a shame because I love David Ayer. Training Day, End of Watch, 2 of my all-time favorite movies. I love the way he directs movies, but here it just feels like the studio was just...
Did he
in
direct
his
Training
ear,
Day?
constantly being like, no, we need it to be done this way, this way, this way, because that's how the
Did
studio
he direct Training Day?
wants it done. And I think that is the key problem with having these directors who aren't used to doing big superhero special effects driven movies,
fact-checking
being told
myself
by studios
live.
what to do. It's like you hired these directors for a reason because you like the way they shoot a movie. Let them shoot their version of this movie, and I think it would come across a lot better. I think the fans would appreciate it a lot more. So yeah, Suicide Squad does have its issues, but it does have those moments.
He did the screenplay for Training
brilliance.
Day.
So with all that being said, I've got to give Suicide Squad 2.5 out of 5 Batman cameos. Have you seen Suicide Squad? What did you think?
And
Let
that's
me know
why
in
it's
the
on this
comments
list.
down below.
That's everything that I had to say about the Suicide Squad. I think wrapped up into a nice little package. I think everything that I said in the past there just rings true. Terribly disjointed. Felt like it was directed by like 4 different people. Just a fucking mess. And had the Batman cameos. Therefore, it goes on the list. F. Solid F. Because let's face it, fucking sucked. Alrighty then. We are now up to Justice League. The first one. Did I review this movie? No, I didn't. If you want to talk about a disjointed mess of a film, this is it. Obviously, with 2 directors having a crack at it, the Justice League, as it's come to be known, it's not good. It's not good. It's not quite as bad as BVS. It's definitely better than the Suicide Squad. I really just don't have much to say about it. It's not good. It's not a good movie. D. It is a solid fucking D of a film. It really is. God, I was more articulate when I actually reviewed films on fucking YouTube. Next is Zack Snyder's Justice League. Yeah, look, I didn't have that high of an opinion of this when it came out. It was so fucking long. Weird aspect ratio. Like, what the fuck you doing with the IMAX ratio? No one needs to see that shit. That being said, it did feel at least more cohesive. It felt like one person's vision rather than 2 people's vision. And I was actually surprised at how much extra footage either there was in the bank or that they eventually refilmed as pickups before this came out. The downside of this is that the precedent has now been set that they've given into the fanboys, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I think the fanboys should stay in their fucking box sometimes. I'm more than happy to put this right next to BVS. I think that's where it belongs. They are both Zack Snyder's actual vision for this universe. There's definitely some stuff in Justice League that I liked more. I liked Aquaman's characterization better. I think Wonder Woman had more stuff to do. Much preferred the Batman in this, and the Superman in this far superior. Like, the Superman in this is so much better than the 2017 Justice League Superman. Night and day. Plus they gave him the black suit. No mullet, but a black suit. And now we come to the Batman. Where does this fit in the pantheon of Batman films? Where do I put this after all is said and done? If you want to go watch my Batman review, is on YouTube. You can go and check it out. It'll be the top corner now. There'll be a little card that pops down. That's where that is. You can go and watch it. And I reviewed it right here on Twitch, twitch.tv/Elneedso. Come hit the follow button if you want to see more bullshit like this. As I said in my review, this is a good beginning to a new universe that they're exploring. I like the world that is set up. I liked the characters that are brought forward. Their new characterizations, the new versions of these characters we're getting. As I said, it had a bit of a meandering end. Kind of the same issue I have with The Dark Knight, where it's got a villain you just can't punch to end the conflict. It needs a little sort of tacked on ending so that Batman can punch someone to resolve a situation. Outside of that, the atmosphere, the world that it built, this new version of Gotham that we got, all things that I really, really enjoyed. And I think Robert Pattinson's portrayal of Batman is really, really good. And it's something that will definitely evolve as the movies go on, which I'm very much looking forward to seeing. So I think this has to go at the top of B. I'm happy with that. Top of B, it's definitely better than Dark Knight Rises, definitely better than the 66 Batman. For me, sits above Mask of the Phantasm, but doesn't quite reach the heights. And maybe after a second watch, this is like, I've only seen this movie once. Maybe after a couple more watches, I'll grow to appreciate it even more. But for right now, it doesn't beat out 89 or Batman Begins for me. And it definitely doesn't beat out The Dark Knight. That is my Batman cinematic releases tier list. And if you want to do this list yourself, the link for it will be in the description down below. Thank you all so much for watching. If you're here on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. It's free. If you want to see more videos like this, come and check me out on Twitch. But yeah, I will catch you all in the next video.